So good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kendra Chandler. I'm the Executive Director for the Urban Land Institute, Orange County and Inland Empire. And we are so excited that you have attended our now third Women's Leadership Initiative program. So thank you so much. I wanted to kind of do just an opening for our moderator, Miss Julie Brinkerhoff-Jacobs, and then she's going to take it from there, introducing the rest of the panel and diving into the program. So I had the pleasure of working for Julie for 2 years, so I felt compelled that I knew enough that I didn't have to bring her actual bio up here and read it to you, but we'll see if I do okay. So Julie is Senior Executive Principal, President, and CFO, did I get that right? Of Lifescapes International. And Lifescapes International is a landscape architecture design firm. They do wonderful work in the hospitality industry. You may have seen some of their work, like Wynn Hotels. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. We also have Mr. Don Brinkerhoff here with us, and that is Julie's dad. And she has been fortunate enough to learn from her dad and work with her dad for a long time, and it's a wonderful environment that is super supportive of women and encouraging of women. Julie does that both professionally and personally. I can speak for myself saying that I learned quite a bit working with her, and so I drug her into this role of being one of the co-chairs of the WLI, which we started last year. So thank you, Julie, for stepping up and doing that for us. And without further ado, I will introduce Julie, who will introduce your panel to you.
Great, thank you.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
In the back? Okay. Usually I don't have a problem.
We're tracking.
Right, Dad? He's smart. He's silent. He just sits there.
Anyway, thank you, Kendra, for your introduction. First of all, I want to thank the Women's Leadership Initiative Committee. So those of you who have worked tirelessly on these last 3 programs, could you please stand up and be recognized for all your efforts, please? And then I also want to thank Shelby Gleba, who is the marketing manager at Lifescapes, who is our videographer, audio data. And the story about that is when Kendra decided to go back to WLI, because Phyllis got her back, I told her she couldn't leave unless she found me a replacement of herself. And I said, you can't leave until you get me someone that's, you know. And the great part is actually Kendra recognized that Shelby, who had taught at Cal State Fullerton in social media and marketing and all the stuff that she does much better than I could even imagine doing. So she's been a great asset to us for the last couple of years. So I want to acknowledge her involvement. And I've got a couple of colleagues here that are supportive too. And thank all of you for coming as well. So what I'm going to do is first tell you the title of this event, Women in the Workplace, Growing in Every Generation. I've done a lot of research on this, not nearly as much as our wonderful featured speaker, whom I'll get to in a minute. But, so if any of you want any of my background material, just give me your card or put the card over there and I'll be happy to send it to you. Because it's a lot of work and it is very interesting stuff. So please feel free to do that. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to start from Generation Z representative. Everybody here is representing one of the generations. Okay, so Ryan and I might be both baby boomers, but I'm not talking about baby boomers. And there's a reason for that. So I'm going to do Gen X, and then Millennial, and then, Millennial, then Gen X, and then baby boomer, and then old. Seasoned, the traditionals. And the reason I wanted to do it that way is one of the advantages to having a father that is very intellectual and reads a lot is he once told me, I think it was Cicero or one of the Greek philosophers that said, we all stand on the shoulders of those who come before us. thought, you know what? This is the way I think it's a natural way for us to proceed. And it'll all come together when Nina starts talking about the characteristics, some of the characteristics, and so will I a little bit as well. So, let's get started here. So, the way this is going to work, I'm gonna introduce them all, and then I am also going to then have Nina come up, and for about 20 minutes or so, she's gonna do something pretty special. And then also, if you haven't met her yet, please make sure you do. She has very strong opinions about life, and she's lived a very full one, and I'm gonna ask her some questions at the end about, what has she done that has guided her to live such an enriched life, outside of her wonderful husband. Where's Claude? There you are. There you are. This is Claude doing. Stand up. Stand up. So before I start that, I want to show you guys. I'm gonna quote a couple things from this book. I was up in Santa Barbara having lunch with a friend, and there's a wonderful bookstore in Montecito, and I went to the children's section just because I like seeing what's going on in young youth books with literature. And I found this book, and it's called 100 Women Who Made History, Remarkable Women Who Shaped Our World. Now, when I was a little girl, we didn't have anything like this. But this was just published in this year, and I'm thrilled that we have something like this. And what's interesting is all the snippets inside of all the women over time around the world are like 2 paragraphs. So children will like it, she'll love it. So will she. But it's wonderful, and so I just want to, before we get started, I want to point out a couple of factoids that I read about in here, because this is pretty interesting. So, let me just switch pages. So Murasaki Shikibu, anybody know who she is? She, in 1021, wrote what is considered the single greatest work of Japanese literature, The Tale of the Genji. It is also one of the world's first novels. That came out of this wonderful book here. Another one, Hypatia of Alexandria, who was so brilliant. She was a brilliant mathematician, a philosopher, an astronomer, and was considered one of the greatest thinkers of the ancient world. Her father, unusual at the time, decided to educate her himself. He was a revered mathematician and she became a very charismatic teacher. She was so well known that eminent thinkers traveled from many different countries to Alexandria just to hear her lectures. Have you ever heard her before? No.
She's burned at the stake.
See, he would know. She was burned at the stake, apparently. Wow, I didn't know that. They didn't say that in the book. And then there's Ada Lovelace, who wrote the first computer code with Charles Babbage, who was the father of computing. Never heard of her? Or how about Avril Mansfield? She's a role model to women trying to succeed in a male-dominated field. She pioneered stroke-preventing surgery and in 1993 became UK's first female professor of surgery. Pretty neat. And then, and lastly, this woman you have heard of. Malala Yousafzai is a brave young woman, and she's the young woman, speaked out for trying to get girls' rights and education in Pakistan, and she suffered from a head wound from the Taliban and so forth and so on. Now she survived it, obviously, left Pakistan, moved to England, and has continued championing education for girls around the world. She's also the youngest recipient, I just got goosebumps, what an amazing young woman, of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, and is also part of Generation Z. In fact, she could be their pinup. So, again, we all stand on the shoulders of those who come before us and admire, probably more than that, revere those who continue their cause in defense for the rights of all humanity. So now let's commence our discussion with the panelists. So, Noelle Steele over here, she is Generation Z. That means that she was born after approximately 1993. Baby. And she is a project manager for Michael Baker International. It used to be RDF Consulting, for those of you who remember that firm. And she provides entitlement services, including due diligence, feasibility studies, specific plans, et cetera, and other permitting tasks. She graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a BA in Environmental Studies with honors in 2014. She has a slew of activities listed on her bio, but in the interest of time, it's everybody. I wanted to also just point out a few characteristics about Generation Z people, outside of the fact that they're very young. Which is actually a wonderful thing, you know? Anyway, so very entrepreneurial. This generation is extremely entrepreneurial. They can seek non-traditional solutions towards education and many other things. They're comfortable taking online classes. Baby boomers, and hopefully Soraya can talk about that. She's a pretty spectacular educator, probably deals with all levels and all ages of kids. And also, in a few more years, this group will make up 86 million of the 324 million U.S. population just in the next few years. Very important part of our world. And they also grew up with diversity. And that probably is one of the greatest advantages that they will have. So, there you go. And then, Maybe is a millennial. She's an associate attorney at Stewart Kane and practices in the real estate group. And prior to joining Stewart Kane, she served as a judicial law clerk to the Honorable Julia Brand at the United States Bankruptcy Court in the Central District of California. In addition, she worked at Southern California Edison, both as a law clerk assisting the in-house legal department and as a project manager drafting and negotiating land use contracts. She's a really dummy. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree, cum laude, in business administration with a concentration in real estate finance from the University of Southern California, Marshall School of Business, very, very reputable school, needless to say. And she received her Juris Doctor degree, cum laude, from the University of California Hastings College of Law. These folks were born between 1980, it's still really young, 1980 and 2000-ish. There's about 80 million of them in the U.S. They are products of merged families, usually means more than one marriage, somewhere along the line. These are very coddled children. That's what it said. They had a lot of tenacity and what's next attitude, which I love. And they're very self-assured, optimistic, globally connected, and within the next 4 years, millennials will account for 5% of all employees worldwide. So there you go. Look forward to your participation. Okay. And then we have Anne. Anne Britannia, who is Generation X. I have one of these. And I want to thank Ann Gensler. She works with Gensler and for hosting today. She's also very much involved with WLI as well as Navy too. So she's got more than 25 years of design industry experience. She's a senior associate at Gensler's Newport Beach office, and she serves as a studio director, financial service firms, regional practice leader, design performance leader, and director of talent development. You're busy. And then to stay at the forefront of emerging trends and key drivers, Anne actively participates in initiatives tied to strategic programming, benchmarking, planning, and design. She's known to peers and clients as a thought leader. She's passionate about actively mentoring the next generation of talent. She's incredible. And they call them the forgotten generation, so maybe Nina can talk about what that might mean, but she's certainly one of the first generations of latchkey kids. I raised my daughter by myself. She also, same age group. So that's true, that they were all the first generation of latchkey kids. And they grew up having to take care of themselves early, and they watched politicians live, and they saw, and they often, anyway, they often saw their parents get laid off. So they're a little bit more worried than the younger ones, just a little, not much, but a little bit. And then they also, the first generation that will, they say, not do as well financially as their parents did. There are many career changes with Gen X. They may retire early, but they are focused on work-life in balance because our generation certainly was not. And let me talk about Soraya. Okay, the baby boomers. We were born between 1946 and 1964. I like to pretend I'm younger than that. There's about 80 million baby boomers too. We are definitely the me generation. We grew up believing in the American dream because it was promised to us by our parents. And we believed that we were going to be able to experience that. And then Dr. Soraya, more holy, believes that a quality education remains one of the few pathways to social and economic well-being in a global society. Her life's work is dedicated to creating access and opportunity for those least likely to imagine what is truly possible. Often referred to as a student-centered and community-minded administrator, Dr. Coley has built bridges between the university and the community through her service, her research, and her work as an administrator. She has over 26 years of academic and administrative experience. She is the 6th president of Cal State Poly University, Pomona, my father's alma mater, by the way. You know, I didn't mention USC. How many of you guys went to USC? They're not even clapping. I get thrown out of Orange County that time. Anyway, she's also the first woman to serve as president of Cal Poly. Dr. Coley is a past member of the Women's Network of the American Council on Education, the Annie Casey Foundation Fellows Alumni Network, LA Area Chamber of Commerce, many, many, many wonderful appointments thus far. And she earned her bachelor's degree in sociology and received an honorary degree of humane letters from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and her MSW and PhD degrees in social planning and policy at Bryn Mawr College School of Social Work and Social Research. She's married to a really cool guy, Ron Coley, who's a retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel. Some of her and my characteristics are, we have no balance, we live to work. And by the way, I love what I do. You love what you do. See? We really love this stuff. And if I retired, what would I be doing? I mean, I'm sorry, but you know, I come from a gene pool. He's almost 87 and comes in 3 days a week, so that's not gonna ever happen for me. And however, you know, if it's we don't ever ask me any questions about my misspent youth. It's the highest divorce rate in history in our generation. I think he's laughing. I've been married 24 years to Don Jenkins, and for those who know, yesterday was my 24th wedding anniversary. It's a miracle. And also, one of the other things about baby boomers, because we do a lot of retail work, 4 out of 5 retailers attribute 50% of sales to baby boomers. We love to shop. Yes, we do. Okay. So, So now, let me introduce you to our featured speaker. She is a traditionalist. She was born some time ago. I won't even tell the age group, but it's 80 and up, 75 and up. And she is an executive VP and principal sociologist of Gruen & Gruen Associates, a research-based urban economic real estate and development services consulting firm. They started the company together in 1970. So they have been active in WLI forever. She has conducted innovative studies for cities and other public agencies and for shopping center investors, owners, and managers. She currently serves the federal court as co-special master with her husband, Claude, for the remediation and development of an 84-acre brownfield site in Union City. She's lectured extensively, published extensively, and and everybody got your book, right?
Yes.
Okay. So at the end, Nina has graciously offered to hang around for a few minutes for those of you who would like to have her autograph your book. Very generous. So I don't want to steal any of her rest of her story. I could go on and on about her and how wonderful she is. And but one or two things about traditionalists. There were radio babies, right, Dad? Radio babies, yeah. And they were known as the moral majority. They experienced very hard times. They grew up in a time of the Great Depression, and they're the nose to the grindstone attitude towards work. So there you go. So I would like to go ahead and turn this over to Nina so she can share her wonderful story. Go ahead, Nina.
Thank you, Julie. Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me? And thank you, Julie, and the committee for putting this event together. I'd like to start tonight with telling you how gender and race discrimination begins. Where does it begin? Our cultural values and outlook in life are dependent upon three factors: where we were born, at what time period we were born, and to what social economic class we were born into. Now, I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1933 to upper middle class parents. My father was a well-respected attorney, and my mother a college graduate at a time period when very few women went to college. Now, Cincinnati, for those of you who are not familiar, is located in southern Ohio next to Kentucky. And it's always had a combination of Midwestern and Southern values. Still has this combination of Midwestern and Southern values. Now, let me just give you a couple examples of what I mean. One of the Midwestern values was that if you were in the upper middle class or higher income, you did not spend lavishly on consumer goods, whether it was cars, clothes, or anything else. This was considered very bad taste. Now, my sister June, who died last year, would have died years earlier if she had known what I spent on my clothing. Herb Cain was a tremendous writer in the SF Chronicle. Everybody, every day, read Herb Cain. If you wanted to know what was going on socially or any other way in the city, you read Herb Cain. Years ago, I read a column and he wrote the following type of statement. He said he was in Cincinnati, Ohio. He attended a symphony which he liked very much, but he had to comment that the women were very poorly dressed. So I wrote Mr. Cain, the only time I was ever published in his column, and I said, Mr. Cain, you're absolutely correct. The women in Cincinnati, Ohio are poorly dressed, unlike the San Francisco women, but they know when to clap in the symphony. Now, in terms of Southern values, you never called anybody by their first name unless they were extremely intimate. You know, there'd be a few people you might call by the first names. Everybody else was called Mr., Mrs., or Ms. Now, you can imagine moving to Berkeley, California in 1964 after living in Cincinnati all my life. And I called my next door neighbor, Mrs. So-and-so, And after about a month or two, she said, "Why don't you like me?" I hadn't a clue what she was talking about. Frankly, I didn't have a clue what was going on for several years. But at any rate, I did learn to call people by their first name. Now, America was a very biased country in the mid-20th century, and not just in the South. Not only was there bias against African Americans, but also Asians, Jews, Catholics, as well as lower-class immigrants from Ireland and Italy. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants ruled supreme. You know, we refer to them as WASPs. A universal value in the mid-20th century, irrespective of location, was that every woman's primary role was to be a wife and mother. Women in this era were considered old maids if they weren't married by age 25. During World War II, because of the labor shortage and the need for increased productivity, women were encouraged to take jobs, particularly those that helped the war effort in manufacturing and nursing. But post-World War II, they were once again strongly encouraged to go back to being wives and mothers and leave the wage earning to their husbands. My father's own law firm hired a woman attorney during World War II, and she was dismissed at the close of the war. In the middle of the 20th century, the primary jobs considered okay for women were teaching, nursing, and in some instances, high-end specialty stores. And this is why in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, our public school systems were so damn good. Well, I'm not joking. You had the best and brightest women, many of whom of the type are in the room today, but I don't think you're going to find a school teacher in this group. And so this is why, as I say, the public schools worked at that time period. Now, I've been asked many times why I wrote the book. In fact, I was asked tonight by someone on why I had written the book. For about 20 years before I wrote the book, I would give talks to younger women particularly, telling them how it was in the old days. And after I could convince them I wasn't making it all up, and by the way, I don't have that good an imagination, they would say, well, you better write the book now, and it would be wonderful before you lose all the information. And I thought, they're right. And so, in 2015, I said, this is it. I don't do it now. How do I know? And so I spent the time writing it, and I can market it myself with 3 factors that I think I have going for it. It's very brief, it's very funny, and it's cheap. What could you ask for? And while the book is funny, I have to confess, I didn't think it was funny when I was living these experiences. So I'd like to read you just one chapter from the book called My First Consulting Job Required Hiding in the Ladies' Room. In the 60s, most professional consulting firms employed women only as secretaries and sometimes as office managers. Since its establishment, the Arthur D. Little Company had maintained a policy of not employing women in any professional categories, which, according to ADL, did not include secretaries or office managers. Claude, an urban economist, started working there in 1964, first as a consultant and then as a full-time professional. In 1966, Cyril Herman, the vice president in charge of the San Francisco office of ADL, received a call from Cyril Magnin, a specialty women's clothing store chain. He was chairman of Joseph Magnin, and these stores were located in both northern and southern California. Magnin, whose civic leadership, including chairing the San Francisco Port Authority Board, was so well respected that he was often referred to as Mr. San Francisco. His many social and civic activities were frequently reported in Herb Cain's very popular San Francisco Chronicle column. Magnin called Herman to ask that ADL conduct a study to forecast the profitability of opening a Joseph Magnin store in a South San Francisco suburban shopping center. As the head of the ADL office, Mr. Herman was eager to accept the assignment, but both of the urban economists in the office were already overcommitted on work for other clients. Therefore, he delayed in responding to Magnon's request and tried to convince Claude to accept an even heavier workload. Claude refused and pointed out that I was eminently qualified to handle the assignment and suggested he call me. Initially, Herman responded to that suggestion by reiterating the company had a rule against hiring professional women. But after thinking the situation over, he agreed to let me conduct the job, but only if I agreed to be paid out of petty cash so that no one in the Cambridge headquarters would ever know that he allowed a woman to work as a professional marketing analyst at ADL. I agreed and went to Magnon's office to get the backup information and cooperation needed to conduct the study. The study went well. It recommended that a Joseph Magnon store be opened in the suburban center, and the company followed my recommendation. Several months later, Mr. Magnon once again called Mr. Herman, requesting a second retail study at another location. Mr. Herman was delighted to be able to tell Mr. Magnon that Dr. Lowenstein was now available. He was taken back when Mr. Magnon stated no, he wanted that girl. Herman's initial response was, she doesn't work here. Cyril Magnon's response was, great, I'll hire her myself. Within seconds, Mr. Herman changed his tune and indicated she does work for Arthur D. Little. Now, the retail industry was quite different from the typical professional firms at that time, in that women often played leading roles. Cyril Magnon's aunt owned and ran the I. Magnon store at the top of the line women's specialty store located directly on Union Square. Some of the most important fashion designers were also women. I spent the next 2 years directing studies, retail studies for Cyril Magnon, including developing a store expansion program for Southern California. As part of this work, I developed one of the retail models based on surveying Joseph Magnon's customer base. The survey uncovered that while income was a significant factor, education was even more so. A young woman married to a well-paid electrician, but whose formal education stopped at high school graduation, was far less likely to be a customer than a woman married to a doctor who was still in his residency, despite the fact the electrician had a higher annual income. Even more interesting was the fact that while the profile was the same for both the Northern and Southern California Joseph Magnon customers, their motivation for purchasing the apparel was not. While the head Joseph Magnon buyer was safe in ordering the same apparel for both Northern and Southern California stores, Joseph Magnon had to market the products quite differently. In Southern California, the apparel was branded as being in good taste, and in Northern California as avant-garde. After the success of these early retail studies, some of the other men in the office began putting me on their consulting teams, particularly when surveys were involved, and I loved the work. However, even after a year and a half, I was still hidden and paid out of petty cash. When bigwigs from Cambridge visited the San Francisco office, I was required to hide in the ladies' room. One day, the chairman of the board, General James Gavin, arrived at the San Francisco office to visit with the most important clients. Cyril Magnon was on the list, top of the list, for 2 reasons: as an important client, but also as a bigwig Democrat and strong supporter of President Johnson. General Gavin had been an ambassador to France under President Kennedy. At the end of their initial visit, Mr. Magnon invited General Gavin to dine in his private dining room. General Gavin inquired as to whether Magnon would like any of the other local ADL office people to come. And he said yes, Mr. Herman and the 2 Bruins. Upon his return to the ADL office, General Gavin went directly to Claude's small office to inquire what Magnon was referring to when he said the 2 Bruins. Claude explained the other Bruin was hiding in the bathroom. General Gavin asked one of the secretaries to get me out of the bathroom and went to meet me in my small ADL office. He was somewhat taken aback, since he had never given a thought to the rule against professional women, particularly since he had daughters. I was subsequently made the first legitimate female professional in the company. Change came, but slowly. In fact, for many years thereafter, if a male professional married a secretary, it was still the secretary who was immediately fired. Both Claude and I remained at ADL until they went public in 1970. Claude is a full-time staff member and myself in a consulting role. Prior to going public, all team leaders were allowed to pick their team either from within the firm or from outside consultants. After they went public, the company pressured team leaders to select workers from within the firm, particularly those with limited amounts of billable work. Often, there was an obvious reason for their low billability. We knew it was time to depart. Now, while discrimination is nowhere near as outrageous as it was a half century ago, it's definitely still with us, but far, far more subtle. And I'd like to give some examples. 2 years ago, there was a survey of professional men and women, and they were asked, among other questions, one question, had they negotiated for a wage increase sometime in their employment? Now, I knew there'd be a difference, but I didn't expect the difference that was on the survey. 57% of the male professionals had negotiated for a wage increase, 7% of the women had negotiated. Now, we all know that if a company doesn't have to pay higher wages, they won't. Now, women today are still considered, if they're Hillary Clinton, or me for that matter, if you're somewhat aggressive or very aggressive, you're considered bitchy, pushy, something negative. But if you're a go-along type lady, you're considered to lack leadership. This does present a problem. Another situation that happens for academic journals, particularly in economic journals, if a female and male co-author an article, even if the female is the lead author, the male gets far more credit. And there was an article in the New York Times about a year ago where a woman claimed she would never co-author an article again with a male colleague because she wouldn't get credit. That's still going on today. In August of 2016, there was an American Bar Association ruling prohibiting male attorneys from knowingly denigrating female attorneys. Now, I talked to one of the women who helped get this regulation written and passed, and she said it was not easy. Now, what do I mean about male attorneys denigrating female attorneys? If they're opposing litigators, the male, not all of them by any means, but some of the males would refer to their female opponent by their first name, and occasionally words like honey, denigrating in the minds of the jury. New State Bar of California recently passed an ethics rule that has not yet gone before the California Supreme Court, so it has not been passed. And it would completely ban sex between male lawyers and their female clients unless they had a previous relationship. These things are still going on big time. A 2016 National Structural Engineering Survey conducted with employees at all levels found the following. Women engineers were far less likely to have children than male engineers. At the principal level, 85% of male respondents, only 61% of female principals had one or more children. While men have taken an increasing role in sharing household duties, it's still far from equal. The survey data indicated 65% of women versus 35% of the men contributed to parental caregiving. And I wonder if this has anything to do with there being far fewer female principals than male principals. Not tested in the survey was which gender takes responsibility for taking care of elderly parents. But I think we can guess the results if this question had been asked. I'd like to now read just a few paragraphs. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. March 15, 2017, so you know it's a recent article, New York Times, entitled, For mothers seeking office, a familiar double standard. A new study has found that it's harder to reassure voters that women who run for office can balance work and family. Drawing on 11 focus groups in 5 cities and an online survey of 1,000 likely voters, all conducted before the election, the Barbara Lee Family Foundation tested voter reactions to an array of candidates. Married mothers of young children, single mothers, unmarried women without children, lesbian couples with children, divorced women, and married fathers with young children. I'm going to skip down. We confirmed that traditional gender roles are still powerful, influencing what we perceive to be acceptable and appropriate behavior for men and women, said Adrienne Kamel, Executive Director of the Foundation. For example, despite sweeping societal changes, many people still assume motherhood is a central role for women. That in turn affects how they view women candidates. And just to give you one of the concluding paragraphs, the voters interviewed, both women and men, understood that they were judging women more harshly, but many believed that the presence of a mother was more important for young children and saw women as nurturers. Candidates' responses were most effective when they offered specific examples of their commitment to their children, explained their support systems at home without going into too much detail about their personal lives, and then moving quickly back to policies. Now, while these sexist challenges come from a wider culture, where does it all begin? And I think it all begins because we still are raising our daughters very differently from the way we raise our sons. Participation in marches is a necessary way to change cultural values, but it's definitely not sufficient to change the underlying cultural beliefs. And I like to say we must begin with our daughters. And I'd just like to make a comment about that. I was giving a talk last month in Scottsdale, and there was a young professional woman, I would say she was a millennial, and she looked pretty upset when I said that. And after the Q&A, she said to me, "Oh my God, I'm a professional woman, and what do I tell my daughter, 2-year-old daughter every day, how pretty she is." And that's lovely, but do you tell your son every day how handsome he is? We've got to start talking about what they can do and how they can achieve. Telling them pretty doesn't need to be a daily exercise. So I would like to leave it here because I want to hear the panel as much as you do, and I thank you for your attention.
So, can you hear me? Ooh, sorry. So, Nita provided us with some very interesting questions so that I can ask each one of our panelists. So, I'm going to start with one of these questions, and I like this question, and I'm holding the mic, so I get to say this. So, but this is interesting. I'm going to go right down, I'm going to start with Soraya in this case. Has your generation made any positive workplace changes for women? And if so, which have been the most successful?
I would say that, in fact, I'm part of that generation that spanned the civil rights and the women's movement. And it was done because I think we in our society, we still struggle with how to identify talent that isn't the norm. And we change what the norm looks like from one era to the next. And so having come through those movements, I developed a collective responsibility. it was understood that I stand on the shoulders of others, and therefore my shoulders should be broad enough for others to stand on. And I think that in some cases, we've become so individualistic that collective sense of passing it on. So for example, as I have done the hiring, my provost is a woman, my vice president of student affairs is a woman, and it is not one of those things where you are looking for the woman, you are looking for the person who reflects the values, who reflects the talent, who reflects the ability to get the job done. And the nature of work has changed so rapidly that we no longer work in these individualized silos. We need to know how to work in teams, how to work collaboratively, and there's a certain orientation that comes that makes working with women a very appealing experience. So I would say that, particularly being in education, I see my role as keeping the doors open. The doors are closed. And there are those who have to stand in the doorway. You have to put your foot in the doorway and say, we will not close this door on underrepresented individuals. I am president of Polytechnic University, and when I think about the work that we're doing now with elementary and junior high school children around, and particularly girls, around engineering, because their sense is, my brain doesn't work that way. And we've got to dispel that. And when you see them, when they're given the opportunity to engage, their brain works fine. And it's about the expectations. It's about having the same expectations that you can solve this problem that we have in society for males. So yeah, it is just a natural part of my leadership style to expect that I have responsibility to pass it on.
Thank you, Saraya. I'm going to ask that same question of our Generation Z person.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, most of Generation Z is not in the workforce, so it's hard to say what our generation is going to change. But
You're not getting away with that one.
Continue. Like you said, I think that this generation has grown up in the most racially diverse American population of ever, and I mean, I see that inclusiveness. My brother is 16, and I see the way that kids care about what's going on in the world, and they have compassion and empathy, and I just think that this is going to continue growing what Sarah was talking about, standing on each other's shoulders and just furthering the inclusiveness.
Great, thank you.
You guys want to chime in on this one, or do you want to have any comments about this question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The millennial generation has been so fortunate to have generations before us who set the way for women in our industry. And so it has made it easier for us, in a sense, to assimilate in the different firms and organizations that we're part of. And so what I believe the millennial generation has done is taken that road that all the generations have paved before us for us, and taken that stance and initiative to be like, we are equal counterparts with our male counterparts, and we can participate in the same organizations and the same activities that our male counterparts have participated. And just taking that initiative to be involved and to be there and to coordinate and to interact with our male counterparts in the various organizations is what the millennial generation has done to set the way for future generations.
So, and I would say that Gen X, we really, my mom was a baby boomer. Everybody really paved the way for us. But I grew up in the women's lib movement. And I don't know if anybody remembers a perfume called Angele. They would have that commercial, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, and go into the rest of it. But honestly, it was like the super mom. And I do think it's not really, it was an unrealistic expectation. Honestly, I have a great marriage, I have great kids, and I have a great career. but I've had to temper my expectations. I am not Martha Stewart that I thought I was going to be, and making beautifully decorated cupcakes and bento boxes for my children's lunches. I mean, you have to temper it. You have to. We really, I think, Gen X has really paved the way for family medical leave act, nursing rooms and mother rooms, in offices. I think really that work-life balance that we've really focused on. So that's what I see our generation has done.
I think it'd be very interesting. I think it may have been Nady, or it could have been you, Noel, that asked the question. They submitted some questions to me too, about how has the workplace accommodated working women now. And I'm paraphrasing it, but I think that is something that's worth discussing, because I think there has been some change, certainly, from, baby boomers even. You guys want to share some of that? Well, you don't.
Well, I mean, my firm has lots of flexibility on hours, and I think as I look into the future, as marriage and motherhood come into play, that's definitely something important that would affect my life in a positive way.
What about your company, Nady? You guys have pretty flexible?
Absolutely. I'm happy to say that my firm, Stewart Payne LLP, is filled with wonderful partners, and everyone has a focus on family and life. And I'm thrilled to say that it's not only the females and the women in the firm that have that opportunity to spend time with their families and focus on things outside of work, but it's also the males. And it's really good to see that the males take that time to spend with their family, and they value their outside life as much as they value their work life. And that's very inspiring to me as a female, and they're very flexible with that.
Yeah, I think that, it was slightly stereotypical, but I don't think, well, no, it isn't. I don't think you ever changed the diaper, did you, Dad?
Heck no.
So the traditionalists, it was really about, very, very specific lines were drawn for most families. And then,
Julie, Claude changed diapers.
stand up and take
Can I also just say something that, because I think what you're hearing, which is, I think, an excellent example of the projection from earlier generations, because even though women may have had the option, they felt guilty.
Right, yes.
And as a younger generation, there isn't the guilt. And so and because I think in the older generation, that option may have been available, but you knew that there was a kind of hidden assumption that you shouldn't have to be able to take that leave. Because that
You're
was,
100% correct.
Yeah.
I was asked many times, what did you do with your children during the day? And I said, I locked them in a closet. But we were asked frequently that question.
I have to also say, because Nina and Claude raised 5 boys and were full-time. And what, you were 18 when you had your first child?
Yeah, well, even funnier, if I can tell a very quick story. I was giving a talk on the different demographic groups like you were, and it was for Urban Land Institute, and we had a panel. And I'm going on that the millennial generation, many of them, I think 35% only when they're asked in their 20s, do they, professional women again, not the whole generation, but professional women, do you plan to have a child? And only 35% in their 20s said they did. That doesn't mean when they're 35 or 38 they don't have one, but they don't intend to. And then they said, but we have dogs, and then I go on how wonderful dogs are, and you don't have to pay for college, and you don't have to and I'm going on and on about the damn dogs. And Claude is in the back of the room, and he says, now she tells you.
So, I have to say, as far as LiveScapes is concerned, personally, we have a very close family, and there's a lot of us. My father has
20 great-grandchildren now, 12 grandchildren, there's 4 of us. And I think partially, and my mother, who, God rest her soul, passed away a couple of years ago, was like Mother Earth. She's a brilliant woman, worked all the time, but absolutely loved being a mother and a grandmother and a great-grandmother. And if everybody else in the firm had little kids and they couldn't get babysitters, we've never turned down anybody from having their children come in and stay. And sometimes it just worked out that way. I never got a sense of concern about that. And it may be because of the way my parents thought about children. In fact, I'm sure that influenced it a great deal. But I also think that it has created and we've watched other people's children grow up, you know, because we've had people work for us for a really, really long time. We used to have, the kids would come in, they'd get Christmas presents and, you know, just them, you know, just, well, and their parents, but they would come in. And I think that, I hope that more companies, and not just, you know, mom and pop's companies, look into this. The other thing I'm hoping, and maybe you guys have unofficial rules about, obviously in the state of California, you know, if you have, if you're pregnant, you can take up to 3 months, 10 months now?
10 minutes.
Oh. It's 10 months now. Anyway, don't say that too much, that's too early. But, you know, if we have that, but the other thing that I was reading recently was that so many of us, particularly the baby boomers, have aging parents. And now there are people, you know, even if it's informal, some are doing it formally, that allow for time off for doing caregiving for elderly parents. And I think as the baby boomers continue to move into more and more of them, and even you guys, you're next, into caring for elderly parents, I bet you will see a change in the way, because the world's getting older, it's in the United States, a change in the way we, our attitude towards caring for elderly people. So do you guys have any of that in your firm yet? Has anybody talked about it yet? It was in the Wall Street Journal. I thought it was pretty interesting.
My firm, like I mentioned, they're very great about taking time off for your family, and so we actually just had one of our office administrators, her elderly mom, she had to take care of her and find her a home, and she took, I believe, 12 weeks off. So, that's not the policy, but the firm is great at accommodating the associates and the employees.
See, I think that is extremely commendable. Having been through that with my own mother, and luckily, he still comes in, thank goodness. But I think that the interesting part about all of this is the societal changes and what that is causing. Whenever you're starting to do or focus on a speech about something or a talk about something, you always end up finding things in front of your face you may not have noticed before. Like I was on my way to Vegas, and Southwest Airlines have, if you want a copy of it, it's fantastic. They actually interviewed a lot of their own millennial employees, and they talked about parenting and how they picked out 6 of them, 2 guys and 4 women, and it's amazing the amount of flexibility that the millennials having within their own marriage, but also the acceptance of childcare and so forth. And I guess it's a big deal to me because I raised my daughter by myself, and I was really fortunate. I had a really close family, and I found one babysitter for 7 years for my daughter. It was like incredible. But there are a lot of people who are faced with childcare issues as working professionals. Have any of you guys, men or women, have you ever had problems with that? Has it ever interrupted any part of your life at all? Because it sure did me. That's good. It's really good. So, okay, let me
Probably should have done this for a couple, another half an hour, huh? So let's do this final question. I'd like each one of you guys, and then I want to open it up for some questions from the audience. I want each one of you guys to describe one personality trait attributed to your generation and its positive or negative impact on you in the workplace or working with others. Then we repeat that each together. Okay.
Thank you. I think that the most important personality trait to attribute to Generation Z is conscientiousness and mindful of the future. We're really hyper aware of the stereotypes that face millennials, and it was beat into our heads every day in college. It's really hard to find a job. People think you're entitled. This, and when it's at the forefront of your mind, it made me work harder. It made me strive further, and I think that the practicality and the pragmatic viewpoint of this generation, I think it's going to just create a strong, flexible, and collaborative workforce, and I think that there's great things in the future for us.
I like your attitude.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Nene.
Yes. So for millennials, I think the strongest personality trait is probably that instant self-gratification, immediate gratification, and that can obviously be a bad thing, like many sources have mentioned, but it leads into the workplace as, feedback. Give me feedback, how am I doing? And it's into the continuous improvement. That's a really big thing for millennials to know how to improve so they can get better and they can give back to both themselves and also the organization that they're working for. And my partners here can tell you that I was really big on pushing for feedback and for a review to make sure I'm doing well. And that just talks to millennials and that they're constantly looking for feedback, instant gratification, and that will lead to a very good workforce in the future.
Anne?
Okay, so for Gen X, I would say it's resilience. Since I've graduated from college, we've been through 3 economic downturns. So many people that I graduated with are out of the design industry for sure. They all just gave up. So you have to be really hardworking and resilient. I mean, just learning new skills to continue to grow your career. I mean, it pays off, but a lot of people gave up. You just got to keep at it. So I think resilience is for Gen X the best feature. They're the forgotten generation, right?
Sarai?
I would say fierce determination and a commitment to social justice. Because I grew up in the segregated South, and that meant legally segregation. And so my experience was one in which you go into a room and there's presumed incompetence. And so you have the mindset that you will not be seen in the same way, that you're going to have differing expectations, and therefore it is about, again, the grit, the resiliency, and having that inner sense of competence, the inner sense of the shoulders on which you stand, that inner sense of all of the sacrifices, and including those who were killed, those who could have made a life for themselves, except for all of the barriers that existed. And so you carry that sense of, as my grandmother used to say, when I would call her and tell her, I'd worked so hard and I just need a vacation, and she would say, you ain't got time to be tired. And so when you carry that through your life's journey, you then understand that the work is not over. And you think that you step forward 5 steps, and we can see how there are things that are trying to be rolled back. And so that sense of it ain't over and you can't be tired is still very much embedded, I think, in my generation.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's really true for me. Nina?
Oh, I think I'd like to open it up for questions.
Okay. There we are. We're going to open it up for questions. So, does anyone have any questions? I'll walk around with this mic, so please raise your hand if you have any questions, or if you want to make any statement.
Oh,
She's going to walk around. Are you kidding me? There's not one question. There we go.
So talking about the intergenerational relationships in the workplace, I think, I'm like the oldest millennial, and my business partner's a baby boomer. And we have found that there's some really interesting ways as we're working together because we have very different values. So how do you approach in the workplace working with people of different generations and learning about their values?
Julie, can I give an answer?
You certainly may.
I think we have to, when we're working in a company, explain, and I believe this sincerely, by the way, we can learn from each other. I spend a lot of time with millennials, you wouldn't believe how much time. And I learn from them and they learn from me. And I think that is the way companies have to explain it. As Julie did so well, every generation has different values. But that doesn't mean you can't learn from each other. And I'm hoping if you go away with anything, that is what you will bring to your company, any company you happen to be affiliated with. It's very important.
I would just add that it's also important to respect and empathy, because oftentimes as you bring new things to the table, people need to still feel valued. And sometimes it is that fear of no longer being on the game. And so I think being able to, as you say, learn from one another, as well as to have empathy, and to be able to explore each other's journey, because that journey helps to inform many times how you show up in the workplace.
So I would say in just really simple terms, because I tend to not think about it, I work with all generations. I mean, we have very junior people, very senior people on teams. It's not so much the generations, it's you got to respect how people want to communicate. It's their individual perspectives. So communication seems to be something that's different sometimes, and this is stereotypes, which I don't necessarily like, but like baby boomers and traditionalists want face-to-face conversations. Millennials and Gen Z, I don't work with any Gen Z, but it's instant message. It's like, they want constant communication. You just have to respect how people want to work together, I think.
Absolutely, I agree. As a millennial, we're huge on emailing, and I know my partners just say, just stop by my office and just ask me. Let's just talk about it. Because by the time it's going to take me to write an email, compose an email, and send it back, we could have had the conversation done, and the assignment would have gone out. And actually, in retrospect, it's actually really true. It really takes a long time to write an email. And I know millennials do it all the time, but it's so much easier to just walk into my partner's office and ask the question. Absolutely.
Picking up the phone.
Yeah.
Kind of going off of what you were saying, Anne, when you say they want constant communication, I think there's constant collaboration. I think the desire for the younger generation to collaborate and to learn, and I constantly want to meet with my superiors and bosses and people from different departments, and I want to learn about what they do and answer questions. And
That's true. Very eager.
Yes.
One of the things that comes up, and I'm thinking particularly as we go forward, and the nature of work is going to change drastically over the next 8 to 10 years. And one of the things that I ask my students as seniors is tell me how you have failed. Because while you're in the educational process, it's important for you to understand and not fear failure. And a lot of our young people won't risk because of that sense of failure. And so I want them to know that failure only means you had to learn something, and it's a minor detour, but stay focused. because there is such a need to get an A. And that need to get that A can miss the quality of the engagement and the learning. So it's not about the A, that we respect the A, but I'm more concerned that you have, and I tell them, don't go out here saying the president said it's okay for you to fail. What I am saying is that I want your educational experience to be one in which you are creative, you're innovative, and that you're constantly testing the boundaries, because the students who graduate in the next couple of weeks, they will have on average 10 to 12 job changes before they retire. And there's a certain mindset that you need to have in order to continue that path and to stay feeling valued and contributing. And so it's a wonderful opportunity, but for a lot of our first generation college students, there can be a lot of anxiety and fear. So, and I think that's part of what we in higher education have responsibility to do.
Hi, my name is Amber, and this question is for Nina and Soraya. Especially since you guys kind of grew up in an era where there were great many institutional roadblocks in your path towards success. So I wanted to know, what was your greatest source of inspiration and strength to kind of propel yourself to continue to keep going and pressing toward the goal?
Well, I can honestly say it was my husband. I've known my husband since high school, and I was frightened to join the debate club, and he insisted that I do so. And in my first speeches, I was scared that I wouldn't get out of the ladies' room in time to make them. I was that nervous. And it was his constant support. And when we started our own firm in 1970, he deliberately made me the outside person, something never done in that era, and he was the inside person. Now, this was at a time that when we went to meetings, the men in the meeting thought that I was there to get them coffee. And that went on for absolute years. What do you do at the firm, I was asked. Now, my husband taught me to say an answer to that question, which I was asked frequently. I've been with the firm ever since I founded it. Would I have done this without him? Probably not. I wouldn't have given it a high probability.
I would agree, and I just think the environment in which I grew up in, there were a number of people who basically said, we can't make it out, but you can. And so I brought that forward. And I've had so many opportunities to see individuals who have such potential. One of the things that I say is, people put a mirror before me for me to see what they saw in me. I never expected to be a president. I started at Cal State Fullerton. I was there for 20 years, and last 4 years as dean. And the president at the time, Jewel Plummer Cobb, African-American woman, I was very involved in campus activities, and she said, one day you're going to be a college president. I said, absolutely not. That's a furthest thing. And then someone else said, I see you being this. And so that's why it's also important for us to look at individuals and to help them see their talents, their strengths, their potential, their ideas about themselves. I always say, sometimes when I'm talking to women's groups, women you've got the table, and I say, we all need your gifts on the table. Well, now, when women put their gifts on the table, they compare their bow to the next bow. Or they say, my box isn't as big as your box. And what I say is, put your gift on the table. Our society needs all of our gifts. And so I've had wonderful mentors. I've had people who I am every day invigorated by the students that I intentionally engage with, because they oftentimes are in that very uneasy period, And so part of what we need to do is to help them develop the courage and the resiliency and to not be afraid. And like Nina was saying, my husband, we've been married 37 years, and we have been each other's cheerleader in a world that sometimes weren't fans. And so I think having that substance, that critical person who says,
Day by day.
you can cry, but tomorrow you got to get back out there. Yeah.
I want to comment on something Soraya said.
Talking. Yeah, you'll need this.
Only, I said I want to comment on something that Soraya said, that the students will have 10, 20 jobs, which will go through. That's not necessarily true. We have one guy that's been with us for 40 years. And he came out of Cal Poly, and we were his first hire. And we have other people that have been with us, 20 to 30 years. I think it has to do with whether they're challenged and comfortable and enjoy what they're doing.
Well, I think what I was referring to is, let's take, for example, what's happening with retail. We don't need malls. We have, the nature of work is changing, so it may be in some industries where you get and you're really able to grow. But when you look at the implication of technology on work, it is going to create a very different set of needs and demands. But I think your company is one of those where there's the investment also. Many companies are not investing in their employees. And so that's another, we've almost become a disposable society for talent. And I think that's part of the struggle that we're having as a society. But I commend your company for that.
Hi, my name is Ada. I'm actually very involved in WLI in LA, but I wanted to know from the panelists, how do you break the code of the queen bee? Because I don't think we've brushed on that. And I think that in my career, a lot of men have brought me to the table, but the people that have held me back were the women, and sometimes I even find myself catching the queen bee syndrome in my own brain, where I have to catch it quick enough to say, no, I'm promoting that woman into that group that I'm in.
Julie, I'd like to make a comment, Ada, because in my era, those were called queen bees. I don't think they use that term anymore. These were women who succeeded and didn't want other women to succeed because that would take away from their success. I hated these women. I absolutely mentored people from day one, practically. But it was very much the women in my era who were the most hostile, and for good reason. If you talk about the Urban Land Institute, there were very few women involved in any field. But half these or more of these developers, their wives were doing an amazing amount of their work and getting zero credit for it. Well, how could they not be resentful of somebody that gets credit when they're not getting credit? So if you read my chapter on the Urban Land Institute, it will certainly talk about that, because the most hostile people were the wives who were not getting credit. But I understood that. I understood that fine. I didn't understand the queen bees, because I thought that was just plain selfish.
You know, I have to say, I've been pretty lucky. I've had a series of wonderful women mentors, and I know that it's been a blessing. And I never really, if those of you who remember Carol Icahn, do you guys remember Carol Icahn? Carol Icahn was a tough, but brilliant woman, and for some reason, I was just kind of, this was 40 years ago. For some reason, she saw something in me, and she pulled it out of me. And I so appreciate her focus on, some little whippersnapper that, I guess she just, I don't know. I'm grateful that she saw something I didn't see at the time. And I hope that your experience with queen bees dissipates quickly. Because at least with baby boomers, and maybe that is unique, maybe it started with us and not with traditionalists, but I have exceedingly close relationships with women in business, and I seek them out, and they're very forthcoming. So I'm sorry that you're experiencing that. You just have to hang out with the right women. You know? And I'm serious, because you'll gain, and not just women, by the way. I have to say, if it hadn't been for my father's attitude about to all of his children, he had 3 girls and a boy. He does say that he got white hair because of the 3 of us, but you know, the truth of the matter is he never ever once said to me, don't go after that because you're female. In fact, he never distinguished between, you know, my brother or I or my sisters when it came to pursuing a dream. It's just do something that you love. And that if you don't, you're in the wrong business. You know, I mean, you wonder why baby boomers are going to be, you know, we live to work. But part of it is because, first of all, I think I've had some amazing training from 2 great parents. But also, I've had a lot of training from other women, from other men, and I am now, happily, learning from millennials and, I mean, more than I ever would have imagined. And I think that when you open yourself up, too, as a baby boomer, and you've got a whole slew of different ages of people working for you, once you actually do that, you learn so much more about how to communicate with all sorts of people.
Can I respond real quick too? I'm sorry. Just have given that vote and oh, sorry, I can yell. I've given that vote, and I've tried hard not to be that person. But I think the way I've dealt with it is by saying, why is this happening? What should we do in this situation? But it's fear-based. I mean, it's fear-based that you're being held back or you're being pushed back by whoever it is. Because, I mean, you think about our economy and you see people getting replaced that hit 60 or hit 55 or whatever it is. And I'm at the cusp of it. So it's very much fear-based that I've worked this hard and I've been through what they've been through. And now this young whippersnapper, as you said, is definitely smarter than I am, and oh shit. So that's what it's coming from. That's my experience.
Okay, so let's all make a pact that we are going to mentor and not be queen bees. I just want to say thank you so much to our panel.
Can't do it yet.
Sorry.
You know, one of the things about being a baby boomer, remember the thing is that we love to shop. We love to shop. And I have a tradition that I do whenever I have the pleasure of speaking with people, that I always give them a gift of thanks. And in this case, they all get a very, very unique art piece that my daughter and her husband work on all the Comic-Cons, you know, they make fence hats and do all kinds of funny, great stuff. But what's neat is that we have all these young entrepreneurial artists. And so one of them made these incredible Wild Woman pins. And they're all unique. So I want to give them, first of all, I want to hand these to them because it was absolutely wonderful for them to participate in this. Nina, thank you for coming down from Northern California. So I'm going to give that you can come up and look at them. They're really cool. But, and please, I don't know where we want to, I guess you can sit there and sign books, or we can do it at a table, however you want to.
I think it'd be easier at a table.
Sure. Okay, well, there's a table over here. I'll just rearrange this and people can come up.
Okay.
But thank you so much for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you hopefully in June. We're going to be doing something fun. Thank you very much.